Welcome back to the Better By Next Week podcast, where this week we cover a topic that's called My Backyard Needs a Fence. So it's going to be predominantly about backyard ultras, but backyard ultras are a really cool playground for testing out all things ultra running. So backyard ultras are almost like ultra running with bumpers on. You have a lot of time to test things out, whether it be nutrition, pacing, and things like that. And they're a very social kind of event. And we're looking forward to, letting people know how to get better at these events, what they entail, and how they kind of relate to, everyday running.
Well, firstly, check out these new tops.
These are pretty swanky tops.
We really appreciate Backyard Ultra Run Club, who sent us over a couple tops for us there. They're actually really nice. This is my first OCC top. I'm
they're nice.
Super happy, and I love the material as
well.
Yeah,
they're pretty nice. I really appreciative of those guys for sending them over, and they came just in time for this podcast.
I know,
so that's pretty cool. But so I guess we'll get started with the podcast, and we'll talk about what we kind of mean by my backyard needs a fence. And for me, the fence represents a plan. And I think for all things, whether it be a backyard ultra or just even a 5K run or a point-to-point event, you need a really, really good plan. And if you build a really strong plan, like a fence, in your backyard, then everything that you put into that fence can't escape. So if you've got your nutrition, your gear, your crew, and you put all these things into your backyard, and you got this flimsy fence that you've built, those things are going to fall apart and fall out of there. Or even on the other side, you might have a really, really strong plan, but you might be trying to put too much stuff in that backyard. And because you've got, every type of nutrition that you want to try, you've got 20 pairs of shoes that you're taking, and sometimes too many options is a bad thing, and then that fence will break. And then that's essentially what we mean by building a strong fence for your backyard.
For instance, if you're trying all these different types of nutrition, like you're having an icy pole here, you have an ice cream over here, you're having bread and soup over here, all in one loop, and something goes right or something goes wrong, you don't know which to pinpoint and whether or not it worked or didn't. So we know a couple of runners who sometimes do that, and then we're like, oh, how do you get through a race like that?
Yeah, well, they don't know if something goes wrong. They don't actually know what went wrong. So,
which is also important in training to be able to implement nutrition, because that's where you kind of find out what goes right with your gut, what goes wrong with your gut. So for some people, chocolate might not go right with their gut, but for others, it might go great. Do you have any specific?
Yeah, well, I suppose for backyard ultras, a lot of it is an eating competition, essentially, because you're out there for so long and you're eating so much. So you want to make sure that during training for a backyard ultra that you're trying different things. I sometimes, what I personally do, I'll eat right before my run. Just to train my guts, so when food's kind of bouncing around or anything like that, I can go, all right, my body's kind of used to it now. But also, I make sure that it's all different kinds of foods as well. Because you don't know on the day, you don't know what you're going to feel like. So trying different things and having those options, it's important, but also not having too many options, like we said, because if you put too much into that backyard, the fence is going to fall down.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy. And for me, sometimes in training, I worry that am I going to be able to consume enough food? But it's also important that you can adjust on the day. So it's not super strict on the day. So And this sort of comes into whether or not it's warm or cold. So if it's cold, you're obviously not going to be drinking as much fluid. Like the other night, we went for a backyard ultra simulation, and it was cold, and I was drinking maybe 500 ml of fluid and peeing a lot. So there, you would probably have to adjust to be a little bit lower. Whereas on hot days, you might have to adjust to more liquid because.
Well, I remember it when we did Miramuona and it was 40 degrees that whole weekend. I think I was having 400 or 500 ml in the aid station, and then I was taking out with me two 2 500 ml flasks in each hand and a 300 ml flask in my pouch, and I was consuming all that out there on the loop because I was sweating so much.
Well, it's not something to worry about if it's not exact, but your pee is a really good indication of how hydrated you are. So if it's super clear, you probably don't have enough electrolytes in your system. But if it's super yellow, you're probably a little bit underhydrated.
Yeah, that's right. I guess one thing I often get asked is, why do I do backyard ultras? And I always think, why do I actually do them? And I think the main reason I enjoy a backyard ultra is because I'm the one that gets to say stop more often than not.
But that hurts. That makes that's what hurts.
But that's the real challenge. And I think that's why people are really enjoying backyard ultras, because they get to go out there and find their limit. And at the same time, they're running with people, and you're at the start line with all these epic runners and elites and people just starting out, and everyone's all motivated. And at the start of each loop, you keep going, so that essentially you find your limit. And that's scary. That's scary that a race director is not telling you that here's the finish line and that's it, unless, of course, you're the winner. But I mean, to win one of those races, it's so hard. But to find your limit, it's a lot easier, and it's a pretty cool way.
Well, it's even funny how you mentioned winning and finding a limit, because even Phil, he's always winning these races, but is he ever going to find his limit? Because you don't know in the backyard ultra. The winner never knows their limit.
Well, I seen Phil's limit when I was at Biggs that time.
But that was an injury.
Yeah, that was.
In a way physical, but mentally, is he there?
Yeah, but the thing is that he's so efficient when he does a backyard ultra that he actually doesn't. I'm sure he struggles mentally at times, but he doesn't have to draw on those resources as much because he's so physically fit. But then when that started to waver a bit, I seen parts of like not chinks in his armor, but he wasn't able to do what he would normally like to do because he started to get injured. But it's funny, that happened because I seen another side of Phil, which was, stopping for runners, helping others get through. And this is at the World Champs. So,
well,
I mean,
even as a spectator for me at the World Champs, I noticed that a lot of people would see him go out, run a quick loop at night and be back. And a lot of people would think he was all right. But I could see it in him that he was struggling. And a lot of people do struggle. So when someone runs a fast loop, it doesn't mean that they're not struggling. It just obviously has something to do with their plan.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's another thing to add.
I mean, to see a guy struggling and still run 100 hours was pretty awesome. So, I mean, that's struggling for Phil. Struggling for Phil is running 100 hours. So that's not a bad.
In the simulation the other night, I practiced running fast 39 minutes, and he was quicker on his 119th hour than what I was. And it was interesting.
That's funny. I guess let's let the listeners know what a backyard ultra actually is for anyone that's listening for the first time, and how to get into them and how you kind of progress.
Well, a backyard ultra is a 6.7 kilometer loop, and you complete that within the hour, every hour, and that kind of goes until there's one person left. So this can range from 15 hours to 119 hours, which is the world record. And there's many backyard ultras across the whole world, so you can look on your local website or whatever and see that this is the backyard ultra going on. So it's actually quite accessible for each backyard ultra because there's so many. And and it's so diverse how you can go into it and just train for 5 hours, or you can go into it and beat the world record, because it's so hard to be able to, and I think I've said this before, but it's hard to be able to compete in other sports like football or basketball against the greats. Whereas here, you're running against them. You can run with them. Even at Dead Cow Gully, there's some people who just want to go for 10 hours, and Phil's hanging back, running with these people whose goals are 10 hours.
Well, you think about how much it would cost you for an hour of LeBron James's time. Or, you've got guys like Phil, you've got guys like Harvey Lewis, Sam Harvey, Merrin. Those guys are some of the best ultra runners in the world, And as long as you can hold on hour after hour, you can actually be right next to them. And they're super generous with their time as well.
The community. That's
Yeah, the community is pretty amazing, and people are always happy to help out. And this is a backyard ultra is a perfect opportunity to actually run with some of the best runners in the world, and just ask them a few questions.
Backyard ultra is also cool because you got people who are fast, more suited to faster races, and or slower, suited to slower races, but also how there's so many people who are physically so strong, but also mentally. So it's so
diverse.
Yeah, it's so diverse and varied across the whole participants.
Yeah, and with backyard ultras, like we speak about events like bigs and things like that, and they're like the world champs of the sport, but a general runner can just enter any event they want in that's local, and they can actually make it onto an Australian team or make it to the world champs, because there is a process of how that works.
Yeah, so that process is a little bit. So it works as there's a bronze ticket event, there's a silver ticket event, and you got the SAT champs, and then you got big dogs, which is the individual world champs, and SAT champs is the team world champs, and the bronze ticket event is almost where the winner, if you win it, you get a ticket, a free entry into a silver ticket event.
And these silver ticket events are hard to get into as well at times, because
the wait list.
Yeah, well, you're on a wait list or anything like that, because what happens when you win a silver ticket?
Silver ticket event. If you win a silver ticket event, and this is the kicker, you get to represent Australia, and there's only 15 people, or Australia I say, but any country in the world, there's only 15 people on that team that represents that country across the whole world.
That's right. And in Australia, there's 5 silver ticket events that guarantee you a spot on that team. And otherwise, to get on that team, what do you have to do?
You got to, and it's a struggle, because sometimes you're there for sometimes even a whole year. You're looking at these totals and you're worried, but you either have to run long enough to be able to make it on in terms of your total amount of yards.
Yeah, so you have 5 silver ticket events, and then it's the top 10 biggest run totals for that country. Yep. So in Australia, we're the strongest, one of the strongest nations in the world, or the second strongest nation, because we came second at the SAT Champs last year. And at the moment, I think the bottom limit of that is, I think it's 63 or 62.
Like
62 or 63 hours.
And that's a lot of hours.
That's right. Or you could go to a silver ticket event and hope that it doesn't get that far and score yourself a ticket.
But there's also a downside to that, because if you win on a silver ticket event on 30 hours, and we've kind of said this before, because I've had aspirations to be able to make it on the team, but you almost...
Well, you want to have the confidence to know that you can get
go
really far,
and you can,
because it's nerve-wracking.
You can put in your part to that team effort.
Yeah.
And if you are a little bit lower on the totals, and you don't know if you can go that far.
Yeah, you don't, but it's also, you haven't found your limit either. So there's been plenty of occasions. So I'll give you an example of Sam Harvey, for instance. His furthest that he'd ran was like 42 or 45 yards before he went and was the assist to Phil Gore's first time world record of 102, I think it was. So Sam Harvey ran 101 hours after only doing 4. So you don't know what potential that person has. So,
but also with the SAT Champs, what happens is that all the countries that are partaking in this competition, the SAT Champs, all run at the same time simultaneously, based off of a Tennessee time hour. So that would start at 7 a.m. and that for another country might be 1 a.m. in the morning. And if a winner, the winner of that will also get a ticket into Big Dog's individual world championship.
Yeah, so every nation's champion gets a gold ticket into the actual individual world champs, and they happen every 2 years, and every other year you've got the SAT Champs.
Yes. And the only other way to make it into Big Dogs is by total again, and even that is what is it this year?
Well, this year at the moment, I think it's down to like 80 hours.
Yeah, see, and that's just really.
And only 3 or 4 years ago, that was the world record.
And sometimes you have people on gold tickets who have won their country's SAT Champs on 24.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But
I
you
mean,
don't know.
But we want to make it. I think not we, but I think Laz and their team, they want to make it as inclusive as possible and try and get make it a worldwide sport.
Well, that's what I mean. It's so cool, this backyard ultra format, because you got people who are maybe just starting out, but they have the potential to be able to represent on their team just by going to a silver ticket event. So there's so many ways, and that's, for me, I think it's really special, because I often look at, I want to represent Australia, and for races like UTMB or point-to-point races, there's a lot of age restrictions, whereas for a backyard ultra, it's very inclusive for age as well, for under 10
Yeah.
people, 10
Yeah,
year olds
well,
doing that.
the beauty of it is, though, that you're coming in every loop. So anytime I've spoken to a race director in terms of your age, they're very receptive to the idea of letting younger runners run, because it's 6.7 Ks, and then they come back and you can see the runner, you can help them, you can monitor them. But I can understand why point-to-point races are a little bit different, because you might not see a runner for 20 or 30 Ks, and a lot of things can go wrong in that span of time.
Whereas you have a down moment and your runner's back.
Yeah, and there's heaps of people around as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'll run a point-to-point race and I might see 5 runners the whole day for a 100K race. But at a backyard ultra, you could see 500 people every single loop for the first however many loops, and then it just gets less and less. So it's cool. It's a very cool way to, have reach goals, distance goals that you might have, half marathon. Yeah, meet new people, but reach distance goals like half marathon.
Anyone can do a 6.7 loop, because realistically, all you're doing is you're doing 8 minutes 53 seconds, I believe. It's like just to get in on time with 30 seconds to go.
You've got so much time. You can walk it, and at the start that seems a lot. That sounds pretty easy, and it's unfathomable that you're going to time out. But you know what? As your body deteriorates, the longer you run, the more tired you get, and the more other things. And there's a lot of factors to consider when it comes to backyard ultras, and we want to help people overcome maybe the fear of entering, just by letting them know what things that they can consider. So time and distance out there is one thing to consider. How long you're going to be out there for at the event, how much distance you're going to cover. So
one thing that we've kind of discovered on our own is that it's not so much the pace to an extent that makes us sore, it's the time on feet. We went for our hike across the Great Ocean Walk. Yeah, Great Ocean Walk. And because we were going so slow, and granted we had our heavy ass backpacks on, but we were going so slow, our legs were just as sore as what we were in a backyard ultra. So it's led me to believe that it's not so much the pace that you're going, it's more the time on feet.
Yeah.
And that's something that someone might need to consider if they want to be going for 10, 20, even 50 hours.
100%. And other things to consider as well, food, bring lots of it. Unlike...
It's super important to come in over-prepared, under-prepared.
Yeah, that's right. So but often what you'll find is that at races, you'll have race directors that will provide a lot of food and things like that at aid stations, because the accessibility to those aid stations is a lot... is not as easy. So you kind of come in all the time and you've got your own kind of setup of what foods you like and what you don't like. So
we'll talk about... I know this is once off because it's a big occasion, but even at Sat Champs, how helpful people are. And I know that even in just normal events, in the local one at MVP that we have here, there's so many people that are just willing to help out. But specifically at Sat Champs, like, everyone was kind of going off and offering, like, there were people there as shoppers for everyone. They go around to each individual tent and go, okay, what do you need?
They were doing they were doing a shopping list for us, and that was amazing.
A kitchen there.
Yeah, but at most of these events, there'll be a kitchen there. There'll be some little snacks and things like that. But predominantly, you got to keep in mind what you've kind of trained with. And then, kind of bring that kind of stuff. And also for comfort, you want comfy chairs, you want a good gazebo, depending on how long you're going to be. These things that you need to kind of consider consider if you're going to be there for 2 or 3 hours and do a half marathon, you probably don't need a gazebo. You could probably just bring a esky, sit on that and bring some snacks. But if you're going to be there for longer, you want to make sure that you've got plenty of race gear. You've got, your tent is set up such that everything's easily accessible.
Not even a tent, just a gazebo.
Yeah, that's right. I'll post up a video and of what it looks like, what a good setup looks like.
We do a little bit of an overload, but that's because you're probably there for 3 days plus.
Yeah, and you've got to kind of have all your things in order, and you never know. You don't know how long you're going to be, and that's a bit of a nerve-wracking part of backyard ultras, because if you go there without a set goal and you just want to go as far as you can, often I know people that have been doing 20-kilometer weeks of training and turned up at a backyard ultra and ran for 24 hours.
One thing that I sometimes see in people, they don't prepare a crew, and I just think, and especially for people who want to go long, I just think it's the worst thing if you don't prepare a crew, because they are so crucial for you in an event, because they're there for you to prepare food and nutrition and water and everything. They're there for you for motivation. And what I see is that we know you. You want to get a crew that really knows you, and that can be super helpful, especially if sometimes for you struggle with kind of trusting us and letting us do our own thing. But I often see when I look around at other crews, they're more asking that runner what they need, whereas we're just doing.
Yeah, I think that comes with experience though as well.
Yes, definitely.
I think that along the journey we and I mean, often people are so used to normal races, someone just coming in and telling them, oh, I've got this problem, I've got that problem. And then that's just how they help them, because they may only see them every 4 or 5 hours. But at a backyard ultra, because your crew sees you so often, I often now see people at backyard ultras with little notebooks. Like the crew will have a notebook and say, I'll write this down, I'll write that down. And you guys were doing similar things for me when you were crewing for me. And I was doing the same thing for you when I was crewing. It's like, okay, this worked, that worked, this worked. So then you would come in and I'd be like, no, you don't need to say anything. We've got you covered. I know you want massage gun there. I know you want this there. I know you want that there.
Because a lot of the time there's so much focus on the actual runner itself, but there's a lot of impact on the crew. Even for me, like, you come in, you give me all your negative energy, right? And for a crew person who's not as experienced, they're going to take that to heart and be like, why is he acting like this? Whereas I knew you. I knew that you were struggling, and I knew that you needed that energy to pass it on somewhere else. Whereas, and then
so you can't get offended. Essentially, you can't get offended.
Yeah.
There's no time to get offended. And I used to be not as good at holding onto that negative energy as what I probably am now. I probably understand a little bit more that I look at you guys and I understand that you're making a massive sacrifice for me when you crew for me. But
like the forgotten bottle. Isn't so much a bigger deal.
Do you notice now? I'll go out, forget
It'll
my
be a
headlamp.
It'll be a joke.
Yeah, we'll have a laugh about it. Whereas in the past, you kind of and there's no point in stressing out about those kinds of things, because it's happened and you move on, and you move on quickly.
And it's also important to understand that crews can forget, and that's okay. Because we often forget.
Well, you guys get tired as well.
Prescription glasses at the end, and it's
right.
like that was a whole nother.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Everything happens for a reason, and it works out in the end, and we learn from our mistakes and so on. And I guess we'll move on to like what we thought. We'd do a little segment on what it takes to do 5 yards, like an important tip, what it takes to do 5 yards, what it takes to do 15, 24, 48, and 48 and beyond. And we reached out to the greatest source of information for backyard ultras in the world, and that is David Patterson from the Backyard Ultra podcast. So he's given us his number one tip for each one of those, and we've got one each as well. So hopefully anyone that's listening wanting to have a go, that they can go, all right, yeah, I slot into that range, that 5 yards or that 15-yard range. And yeah, so I thought
Well, it's actually really cool because he's got, and it's perfect, him as a source, because he's got so many professionals and experts on his podcast, and he can just share over that information.
Yeah,
he's little bits, but they're the most important.
Yeah, so he's a wealth of information. So the first one was, okay, so how to get to 5 yards. So for him, it was more that comfort was the key. and, have a full belly of food when you start, and make sure you got some of your favorite snacks. So it was pretty simple for him to begin with, because for those 5 loops, it is a lot more about just having a good range of food and making sure that your belly's full so you've got enough energy.
Yeah. Well, for me, I had talked to others. I think that's really important because especially if you're kind of nervous in a way where you're like, oh, I don't know what to do for these 5 hours. There are so many people that are running and they just want to talk. And talking, we often do it all the time, is that it takes your mind off things, takes your mind off the nerves, takes your mind off the pain that you might be feeling. So I think talking to people is super cool. And you might make some new friends as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, my tip to get to 5 yards was just to take your time. You've got so much time. You've got a whole hour. You don't need to focus on some of the things that other people that are going deeper, like sleep and all those other things.
Yeah,
so
no.
stay warm, because the worst thing is that you will end up seizing up if you run your loops really fast and you sit in that chair for like 20 minutes. You're going to get up and you're like, it's less likely that you're going to get that 5 yard goal, because you're just cold and it hurts. And especially if you're only fit enough to do 5, you want to make sure that you take your time, stay warm, and move through it. And I guess for 15 loops, Pato spoke about socializing, similar to what you said. Like all these things kind of cascade onto the next thing, so you kind of add it up.
Yep.
But he spoke about socializing with people, and it helps pass the loops, just like you said. And what he said for 15 yards, which is 100 kilometers, it's a hell of a long way.
It is a fair bit.
He said, have a good playlist. Last week we spoke about music a bit, motivating people, but he spoke, so have a good playlist.
Well, you even talked about that anchoring.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Last
so
week.
if you do some of the anchoring as well. So, but Pato mentioned those two things: socializing and having a good playlist.
I have to relate it back to the crew, because I think when it gets to that 15 hours, that's when you're sort of starting to get a little bit drowsy, starting to get a little bit wobbly. And one one particular moment I experienced was that your mate from work, Michael Patterson, when we were doing MVP this year, I was primarily crewing you, and you had a whole
It's
crew.
a different Patterson.
Yes, it's a different Patterson. They're not related.
Yeah.
When I was crewing you, it was you kind of had your own crew going on, whereas he didn't really have anyone. Like I think he had
His
family
wife
there.
came the
His
next
wife came
day.
in. But again, it comes back to experience, and they probably weren't as experienced and knew what he needed. And I found that just by me being there, cutting up some snakes for him just to chew down a little bit easier was super important, especially at that 15 hours. And when someone is looking to get to the 15 hours, by the end, they're not coming in with much time. They're not coming in with much time to fill up their bottles. Whereas I found that he might have been coming in and rushing a little bit. So I just go over and help him, because I knew you had it covered.
Yeah, and what does
people.
that do when you rush? You get anxious and nervous, and you're like,
Oh, am I going to get to the corral in time? Like,
yeah, that's right. And there's all those things that you can control, and then that you don't want to happen. I actually, it's funny that you mentioned about cutting up the food into small pieces, because that is my tip for 15 yards. My tip was to have small amounts of food, but often, because what tends to happen, especially if you're doing 15 yards and you start pushing towards the end of those yards, if you're seeing 15 yards, I'm almost there, and you've got yard 11 and 12 and 13, and you start pushing a bit faster and faster, and your heart rate gets elevated, what tends to happen is that the blood starts to rush away from your stomach, and anything that you put in there, it just sits there. So you need to make sure that you're eating little bits often to keep your stomach going, so it's kind of consuming that food and taking on the nutrients.
Well, adding on to that, we went to sort of see someone about my gut issue that I had previously, and he explained that where if you eat something and you're working, it kind of just sits in there and ferments, and that's that blood rushing away from your digestive system.
Yep. So I guess moving on to how to get to 24 hours. So, I mean, you're starting to get up.
A little bit of a step up here.
Yeah, it's a fairly big step up. You're talking about running for a whole day.
100 miles.
100 miles. So Pato mentioned this is probably where you're going to have to start thinking about creating a plan, and something that's structured around eating, something that has some contingencies in place when things go wrong, like blister prevention, maybe, taking your shoes off more often, maybe changing your socks and things like that. And also having a really positive why. Why are you doing it? Because you're going to start to have moments where they creep in and you're going to want to stop because it's going to really start hurting, and you have to have a really good why.
Yeah, that's that why. It's not my bit of advice for now, but I did have it later on, but I might not mention it now because I
No,
know
I
the tip.
mention it because
But
it's funny because everyone does it, thinks about things differently.
Well,
Like for him,
the why,
it's important there.
the why, and I remember you expressing this to me is so important, because if you don't have a why and you get to that point, I don't know any runner that doesn't get to a point where they're really hurting and go, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? Which is why it's important to have a really well-established why for you to be able to look back on it. It's like, okay, that's why. But I said why so many times and like, why? But all in all, it's good to have a why. But that's not my tip. I think when it's such a good milestone, 24 hours as itself, but seeing the sun, 24 hours, you are guaranteed to see the sun no matter what.
Sun come up, yep.
The sun come up, it is the best bit of energy you can. And I think utilizing that energy is super crucial, especially if
No, no, go on. Like if you're feeling flat.
Because I noticed that, and for me personally at my old backyard ultra, is that when it was just before the sunrise, I was really low because you're kind of chasing. It's like, okay, when is this sun coming up? And it feels like forever. And when it comes up, you're like, oh my God. It's
like
crazy.
a burst of energy.
You're the whole night you're at this little headlamp, and that's the only light source you're getting, and now you're just getting this natural light source.
Yeah, because you're looking for little wins, and when that sun's coming up, it's a win. A similar thing happens when the sun goes down and you put your headlamp on. Those first couple of night laps are really exciting, and you're like, oh,
headphones in.
Yeah, and just those little wins. Yeah. Well, my tip for 24 hours, I think that you're kind of on the brink of needing sleep, and that's where you need to think about what sacrifices you're willing to make, because are you willing to run a little bit faster so that you can get maybe 15-minute nap or a 10-minute nap? But the sacrifice for that is the soreness that you get when you get up, because you are going to cool down. If you can put some blankets on your legs or something like that, keep your legs warm, keep them as warm as possible, because when you get back up, it's going to hurt. But the positive thing about it is that you're going to be a little bit more rested, and you're going to have a little bit more energy to keep going. So for me, it's at that point, sleep is probably one of those things that will get you through that 24 hours, especially in the early hours. I think that from about 2 till about 5 or 6 are probably for me are the most crucial sleep hours, because I come into my tent and I'm like out straight away, and then I feel like a lot more energy to tackle the day.
People take for granted how hard it is the stop start kind of concept around backyard ultras, because although there are positives in stopping and sleeping, there is a negative side to it where that is, like you said, where all your muscles start to tighten up. And that's probably where most of your soreness is coming from. Not the actual running itself, but the constant warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold.
Yeah, I've come in from an end of a loop and said to myself, I wish I could just keep on running, because I'm actually dreading the getting up and being sore.
Yeah, so
So all right, so that's 24 hours. So 48 hours, and you're kind of getting to the really pointy end. Most races that I've known, between 24 and 48 hours, they actually end. People win on 30 hours, 40 hours, around that mark. And Pato's big tip to get to 48 hours was you're going to have to start focusing on training. Training is a huge factor. And having a sleep strategy, which I mentioned for 24, but he mentions it for 48, having a sleep strategy and a crew A crew is now, by this point, a crew is crucial because you're coming in, you're wanting to sleep, you're going to need someone to wake you up, you're going to need someone to care for you and manage your problems, give you food when you need it. You're going to start maybe hallucinating a bit, be a little bit disorientated. So those things he mentioned were really crucial to get to 48 hours.
For someone in general who's just staying up for 48 hours might even struggle to be able to cooperate with themselves. So especially when running, you're definitely going to need a crew to care for you.
Yep.
But for me, I found that patience is very overlooked. And I think that a lot of people might have it down pat, but as you said, when you're when you get into that 48 hours, you're looking at winning, and that those are the numbers that are probably winning most of the races. And what happens is when you're looking to win, you're looking at other people, and that's a big no-no. And those are external factors that you probably should really shut out. And by having patience and just looking at yourself, it's like, no, one loop at a time, I'm okay. And that body check, always relate it back to yourself. And I think when you're looking at other people, that can get in your head a little bit too much, and where your patience kind of is out of whack. And then you start going downwards.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you can't control those things.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. So for me, I actually between 24 and 48 hours, I have this theory in my head that it's almost like a breakthrough moment for most people, and I've experienced it, and it's actually quite an amazing feeling where it's almost like at a crossroads where you're at a crossroads of DNFing or becoming almost superhuman. And I've had it happen where I'm just about to quit. I've had enough. The pain is too much, and I'm just about to let it go. And then next minute, I find myself, I've almost had this breakthrough moment where I'm no longer in pain. I'm running pain-free because because what happens is up to that point, all you're trying to do is avoid pain. So you're going to change your shoes and socks. And after a while, that doesn't work. You're still in pain, all body pain. You try every type of nutrition. You try sleeping. You try all these things, and none of these things get rid of the pain that you're actually in. And then so the only thing left to do is to let go of that pain. And that's what I often describe to people is that breakthrough moment that they'll have if they're, like you said, patient and they're willing to wait for it. That moment happens and they let it go, and then that's when they get through. And it's an amazing feeling because once it's happened once, you know it's going to happen every single time. And when you have that moment, like I just rely on it. I'm just patient now. I'm like, okay, I've got all this pain going on. That's fine. My breakthrough moment's going to come at some point, and then it happens. You let go of the pain, and then you can keep on going. So yeah, I think. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I actually want to get into my next one for 48 hours because you really summed mine up for that, and it was letting go, and that almost, and we've kind of trialed and errored it because what has happened is you found that around the 50-hour mark you start to let go, and that patience, and when you're letting go, you don't look at other people as well. You're more just on yourself, and now we've sort of dialed it in where you're letting go earlier. And part of that letting go is what happens is you're in, you sleep, you food, you're out. That's it. And it's just a cycle over and over and over and over again. And that's that part of letting go. And and I think I feel like it was Kendall. I don't know his full name. I didn't do much research into this. And it's just come to me. But I remember him, and he did a race in America. It was a backyard ultra. And I don't know the race of that, so I'm sorry for anyone who wants to know it. But he said something that was really good, and he's like, this is my life now. And that's sort of that letting go. This is my life for the next few days, and that's all that you're going to do. And I've sort of made my own theory around that where I sometimes think in a 5K, and if I'm really pushing and I want to do 18 minutes, it's 18 minutes of my day that I have to feel hurt. And not even 18 minutes, probably maybe 15 because the first 3 you're warming up. But I applied that same concept to a backyard ultra, and if you want to go big, it's 72 hours of your life. 3 days of your life, and that's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah,
And
I know you normalize 3 days.
know,
That's
I
a
know.
long time when you really think about
I
it.
know.
When you're explaining to someone, it's
even-
only 3 days of your life that you're gonna run for.
Well, that's for me. But
Yeah.
even if you wanted to do 5-10 hours, you just dial and it's like that. For that period of time, I just have to feel hurt.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I've managed to get to that point in backyard ultras where the only thing that I think about is I've got to run out. On this particular one, it was an out and back, so I've got to run out and come back. And that's all I've got to do, and let my crew do what they need to do, and then I get up and I keep going. And, it's actually a pretty satisfying feeling being able to only focus and think about that one thing. But you're right. You put the time aside, you trained for this event. So you've put the time aside, you've trained for it, and then now it's time to just nail it. So you might as well just focus on that. And it just kind of takes away from the pain and stuff like that. And, Pato mentioned with the plus 48 hours, you're in rare air now.
Yeah.
It's a pretty awesome feeling that every single loop that you do, it starts to stack up and it looks bigger. The number looks bigger and you get more excited and more excited. So, yeah, he just said, enjoy the opportunity that you've got. And also think about alternating your crew, because you've got to look after your crew members. Well, they're the forgotten heroes of backyard ultras because they're the ones that keep us out there. So he spoke about alternating crew. But for me, one of the biggest things that I say to anyone, and I often say this to people, no matter what it is, I'll say it at 5 loops, I'll say it at 15, 24, 40, and it doesn't matter what it is, right? It's easier to do one more loop than what it is to do another 5 to get back to where you are, or another 15 to get back to where you are, or another 24 or 48 or 72. It is easier to go from 72 to 73 than what it is to go from 0 to 72. So you might as well do one more loop and just see where it takes you.
It's so easy to say now, but please do not tell your runner that, because I've told Dad that, and it didn't go very well in a race.
What do you mean?
Once I remember,
I'm pretty sure I would have said, yeah, no worries, I'll go crush that one more loop.
Yeah, sure, when you're 82 hours in. But I remember saying, I'm like, you're going to have to run 82 hours to get back to this point. Or you could just run one extra. And you're like, I actually don't want to run anymore. That's it. So sometimes it can be hard to help out your runner when their totals are so big and they just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to support someone who just doesn't want to do something anymore, because what do you have there?
But that's important to also have that chat with them beforehand as well. But we'll move into our insights for this week. And I actually got a couple really cool insights, and actually I got 3. So I got 2 really cool ones, right, that were just epic, and then one surprise one as well. So my first insight was from Phil Gore, who is the current world record holder at Backyard Ultra.
Right here.
And there he is, our man Phil. So Phil gave me a lot of really cool insights about physical and both about mental. But with his physical stuff, he spoke about our favorite word, consistency. And that consistency in training is what gets you the results that you want at a backyard ultra. There's no shortcut to success. He mentioned that as well. And I thought, yeah, you're 100% right. You've got to be accountable because there are no shortcuts. If you're doing the long run, he spoke about if you're doing the long run, keep it long. Don't cut them short. You have to work. You'd have to work hard at it. You don't get to 119 hours like Phil by not working hard. And, you've got to be able to push past those physical limits that you have, because your mental can only go so far. It can only take you as far as the physical has. And then from a mental perspective, he spoke about, focusing on what you can control, and having doing each lap one at a time. And, it's really important. We've spoken about it today. One at a time is pretty much the only thing that you need to do. I remember Phil, listening to Phil during a podcast, and he mentioned that his job is to go out and do the running, and his crew's job is to crew. And so he would come in and he would just sit down and let them do their job, and he would just go and just do that one loop.
Well, I love that because it again relates back to external factors. And I remember at No Time to Die, when I did it last year. And on one of the loops, you had kind of gone down for a rest, and it was the first loop. Mum and Mish came, and I started crying because I got emotional. But it was because I don't know why. I just let the external factor of that. I had an exam coming up, and I felt like I wasn't prepared for it. And you want to know what Joel said to me when I ran out there?
What?
That's an outside job, an out of school job.
Yeah.
That's not now.
Yeah, that's not a job for now. That's a job for later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% right. And
Well, again, that relates back to what your kind of mantra is that it's a tomorrow's problem.
yes, that's that's exactly right. And Phil also mentioned that staying present, right? That's
Yeah.
a tomorrow problem,
Yeah.
isn't it? So staying present, you just worry about what you're doing right now. And I thought that was really cool. And the last thing that he kind of said that really stuck with me was, a lot of people focus outward on what other people are doing, how they're racing, who's dropping out, and stuff like that. You can't control that. So he said, focus inward on what you can control, and you'll have an amazing race. Whether you're chasing 5 yards or 100 yards, if you do those things, if you just focus on what you can focus on, you'll go so far. And I'm really appreciative of Phil's time. He's been so generous with it and with his tips as well. He's an open book, that guy, and it's amazing. And he's right. You have a look at what he does and how he does it, and he does the simple things right, and then that's how he performs the way he does.
Do you even think when he mentions consistency for those who are beginning, I remember when he even began, it's the 5K a day.
Yep.
And I think that's really important for beginners as well, because they might not be able to do the 15Ks, the 20Ks for training runs. And they might be looking at Phil and he's like, oh my God, he's doing a 100-kilometer training run. But
Where did he start?
5K a day.
Yeah, that's right. He started small, and and even if you can't do 5K a day, go for a run walk that's a kilometre down the street. But that starts.
One of my mates even messaged and reached out, and our advice to him was just run walk.
Yeah.
Because that's where you start.
Yeah, he goes, where do I start? What kind of day? Because people don't know.
It's overwhelming. It really is.
Well, especially if you listen to a podcast like this, like today, we've covered so many things. We're talking to people about running for 5 hours, and they're like, oh my God, do actually people run for 5 hours? And that's where we started with the advice. And we're talking about 72 hours of running. So these numbers are insane. But at the crux of it all we want people to do is to understand, to have a go, and there are places that you can actually run with some great runners. Everyone has a story. We all started somewhere. I started running, walked out the front door and ran 6 kilometers, and it took me an hour, and now I'm running ridiculous amounts. But I understand what it felt like to be that. So reach out to us. We're always happy to give advice, and the community is amazing around running and backyard ultras.
You often find that the people who have succeeded and who are the greats will never criticize those who are just starting out.
No, because they know what it felt.
They know what it felt like. You'll never see Phil criticizing someone who's
trying
5K.
Yeah, that's right. Because they're trying, and that's all. He's just like, getting into running. Yeah. So my second insight was from someone just as famous as Phil, and that's Gemma Gore, who is the most famous crew chief on the planet when it comes to backyard ultras.
There's a funny joke that goes along in the ultra running world, and we usually have names, and I don't know if the camera can see, but it's like Tim Caprizak, and there was names along every single gazebo at the Satellite Champs, and what it was Gemma's husband.
Yeah,
it was that. I often mix it.
It wasn't
up.
Phil Gore. It wasn't Phil Gore. It was Gemma's husband.
It was Gemma's husband, and that's really cool because it recognizes the crew.
Yeah, that's right. And Gemma is an amazing person, and she's an amazing crew chief for Phil. And it was really good to get her insights, because I think there's a lot of listeners who do crew other runners, and a lot of runners help other runners. So it's important to to get a crew perspective on it. So Gemma spoke about picking the right crew. And what does that look like? Sometimes people think the right crew is family members. And although it can be, and it's a very good choice to start with, some family members can also, they might struggle to watch you struggle. So having a friend is sometimes better to have as your main crew person, because they're going to be able to push you along a little bit further. She also discussed how it's important to speak to your runner and have a meeting before the race. You know what the goals are, know at what point they want to stop and things like that, because it's really important when you're both in a rational state of mind to have those conversations, because often you'll come in as a runner and you'll be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then your crew person, if you told them that they need to listen to you, they'll say, okay. But if you tell them before the race, no matter what, I'm not stopping. I can only stop if I'm throwing up or if I'm, really in trouble. So then what they'll do, they'll have that guidance and then they can help you along. So yeah, that was a real cool insight from Gemma. And one thing that she did say, which I thought was hilarious, was that the only way that Phil stops is if there's a bone sticking out of his leg. And even if he broke his arm, she would still send him out. So that's how brutal she is in ways. But I mean, she just wants him to see him succeed.
That was reflected at Biggs when he was having issues with, I think it was his shin. I feel like everyone has problems with their shin at the backyard ultra. Still send him out.
Yeah, that's right. And look, Gemma also mentioned the pleases and the thank yous. You don't need, as nice as it is to come in and say please and thank you, she's like, we don't need those niceties. You just come in, you tell me what you need, and we get it sorted. And the pleases and thank yous can wait till after the race.
I remember looking at them when you kind of first came into the backyard ultra world, and I was like, where's these manners coming from? I don't know. And I thought there was something wrong, but it is true. And as I've come to learn, is that there's no time for it in a way.
Yeah, well, you want to be as efficient as possible. And she also spoke about, the crew really set the tone for the runner. So if you're in a gazebo, and she spoke about this, if you're in your aid tent, what she does is after Phil goes out every time, she tidies everything up. And then so make sure when he comes back, everyone's in a good mood, there's positive energy, it's nice and clean, there's no clutter. And then so Phil could just come in and be relaxed, because that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that your runners relax and they have everything that they need.
As well as your crew needs to be relaxed, I found that I needed the space to be organized. I needed it to be clean for both you and me, and it made me feel so much better. And you want your crew to be in a good headspace, because when you're coming in and they're in a bad headspace, it's making them in a bad headspace, and you don't want that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, if there's people around that are really loud and obnoxious, and that, you kind of want to, everyone's excited. I know that there's some awesome things going on, especially when it gets deeper into a race and everyone's excited watching it, but you have to look after your runner first. And the last thing that Gemma left us with, which was really cool, and it's really important, and I think that all crew people should really take this on board, is look after yourself, because you're the most important, one of the most important people in that aid tent. Because if you don't look after yourself and you don't get sleep, you don't put sunscreen on, you don't hydrate, you don't eat, you'll end up not being there for your runner. You'll burn out, and you'll be just as burnt out as your runner, because your runner needs you. Especially, it's so critical towards the end of events to be there for your runner. And I can see why Phil's so successful, because Gemma makes sure she looks after herself. She rotates with other crew. She even spoke about early on in races, she understands that everyone's excited, it's all going on, but that's where she gets a lot more rest, because she understands that Phil's going long and he's going to need her in 4 days' time. And if she's not at her best, then he's not going to be at his best.
That's maybe something you should take on, because I noticed that you're up for the 60 hours that Joel was doing at No Time to Die, and I think you might need to take a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think that it is. Yeah, I know. I was absolutely.
It's hard because you get sucked in.
Yeah, you do get sucked in because you're excited, and then. But I also find with crew is that you build this relationship. Like with this person, they trust you. I don't want to leave you. You don't want to leave. You don't want me gone. And I remember there's been a few occasions where I've been looking at my crew and I can see that your mum's about to go to bed or you're about to go to bed, and I'm like, oh, can you stay up for another couple of hours? Because you trust them. But it's a beautiful thing, because you're trusting your race and your performance is in the hands of that person, and you want them to be there for you as long as possible. But you need to understand that they can't be there the whole time, because they need rest, or else the next day when you're still going, they're not going.
There was one specific moment at Satellite Champs, and I'm just trying to stay awake. I'm like, no, I don't want to fall asleep. And Mum's gone to sleep because it's kind of just rushed in a little in that moment because Mum's trying to get sleep, I'm trying to get sleep, Misha's trying to get sleep, and you're just trying to fit a 15-minute nap in there. And what I did, I set alarm after alarm after alarm, and it would be within like 5 minutes or 1 minute of each other because I just didn't want to miss you. And there was one lap where I felt awful and you came in and you had to wake me up. And that shouldn't be happening because I should have been.
Yeah, but I came in and I said, hey, mate, can I have bed?
Yeah, you were good.
And I was fine. There was no big deal. All right, yeah. So thanks heaps to Gemma for her insights. They were amazing. And it was really good to hear how important it is for the crew and what they need to do to make sure that their runner has success.
Yeah, it's not all about the runner. It's also about
That's
the crew.
right. So, and my last insight was from a world record holder. And I thought that they would give us some really good insights on how younger runners can do it. And so I'm asking you, because I know I teach you to be humble, but at the end of the day, you are the under 18 world record holder for Backyard Ultra. And I can just ask you in person, what is your best advice for a young runner to, knock it out of the park when it comes to Backyard Ultras?
I think I have two tips, and one's a little bit more practical and something that you can kind of implement, and the other one is more that you should just do because it just makes you feel better. And the more practical one is don't overdo it in a way where when you're running in the Backyard Ultra, don't run out too hard, because there was one moment at Dead Cow Gully where on one of my last loops, I just bolted out trying to keep up with Phil Gore, who's having a sleep loop.
So who's about to break the open world record?
Yeah. And I just broke down. I'm like, why can't I just keep up with Phil Gore and this? And I had a massive sook. And I just think just don't put too high expectations on yourself as well to be able to go out and run fast. And yeah, go back to it. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo the pace. And just stick to what you kind of your comfort is in a way. And the other one is I always love to do it, and it's always my advice, and it's just to smile, because I'd always experience at races where I just break down and be all upset and try to David Goggins it through the whole way. And sometimes it works for people. Don't get me wrong, but for me personally, it just doesn't work. It's not me, and I tried to fit a square peg in a circle hole where David Goggins, and it just doesn't work. I just need to smile and let go. And I think that you yourself, you make yourself feel better, and you also make the other people around you feel better.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, that's some awesome advice for younger runners. I think that's a really good one. Just smiling in general, just, releases endorphins and you feel a lot better. All right, what do you reckon we bring this one across the finish line and hit our Better By Next Week challenges? Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
All right, so this week, my Better By Next Week challenge is for you to actually do a 5-minute warm-up before every training session. I know it's not something that you regularly do, and I reckon that it's kind of led you to have, some of your runs haven't been, as good as what they could be, because I feel like you're not warming up enough. So what I'm going to do, and it'll be in our newsletter and on our website. So I'm going to put together a little kind of program for you to follow, and it's only 5 minutes. Lucky to be that, but it's 2 to 3 minute jog and some dynamic stretching, and what that helps achieve is for muscles to start to get activated, and they're going to be you're going to be ready for the activity that you're about to do. Often, I think people just go out and just try and smash a training session, and what they'll find is that towards the end of that training session is when they're really hitting their goals, and they might not be able to understand why. It's because it's taken them that long to warm up and those muscles to activate. So I'd really like you to do that 5-minute warm up before every single training session, and I'd like our listeners to give that a go as well.
This will be really interesting to see how it affects performance, whether or not that improves it or decreases it, or sometimes might just not be for me. But is it all right also to be longer than 5 minutes?
Yeah, 100%. So it's two to 3 minutes, and it is a series of dynamic stretches. So it'd be like bum kicks, high knees, and things like that. But yeah, however long it takes you, and however long you feel like it takes you to warm up. Because on cold mornings, it might take you a little bit longer.
My Better by Next Week challenge for you this week is to think of a really important and a quote that means a lot to you. And whenever it gets hard throughout the whole week, whether that be with running or work or just life in general, try to think of that quote. Because sometimes what I think is and I'll use running for example, is the "you've got this" doesn't really hit as hard as an important quote and something that means a lot to you. So I'd like you to think of a really cool quote at the start of the week, and for every hardship that goes along with that week, you think of that quote.
Okay, that's a cool way to bounce back from any mental, slip ups that you might have, or things that because you do. Sometimes you get sucked in, like, and you're thinking about something, and you're like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. But then it almost grounds you. That's what essentially.
And there's a lot of generic, just again, the "you've got this" or "well done" or you can push through this. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, that was a pretty cool podcast. A lot covered for Backyard Ultra. And I mean, there's a lot I think that our listeners can take away in general for just ultra running, for 5Ks, for all that kind of stuff. And I think that it kind of sums up Backyard Ultra. It's a playground for testing all these things out, your nutrition, your race day strategies, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, if you have the opportunity, try one of these events, because you can actually learn a lot, and especially from experts who are right next to you, running with you.
Well, I really wanted to mention as well for people who are out there that we actually do have a guest coming on in a couple of weeks, and I'm not going to reveal the name because I think we don't want to ruin it for people. But for those who are interested and want their questions to be answered by this unknown great, I think we'll put something out there for people to be able to just do a little Q&A in a segment in that episode.
That'd be great. So if you throw us your questions for, like, any question that you might have for an elite runner. It might be nutrition, it might be strategies for anything. So this person has done everything, accomplished everything, point-to-point races. They're an amazing runner.
So there's a very broad range of questions that you can ask. So I'm sure that most of them will be answered.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks heaps for listening this week, and follow, like, and subscribe on all our channels. It really helps, and we've been pumped with the feedback that we continue to get from people.
Not validation, feedback.
Feedback, that's right. We're getting amazing feedback, and we keep changing things up a little bit, seeing what works and what doesn't. But we're more than happy to give advice to people, and continue this awesome podcast and
this journey.
Yeah. So thanks heaps for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Great work.
Great work.